Okay, now we're going to move on to Revelation chapter 3, but before we continue, there's some left from the previous chapter that we ran out of time on the last video to complete. So we're going to read the rest of that first and then move on to chapter 3. Okay, so where we left off, the candlestick guy that John saw, according to this book, has now, after praising them for in the church of Thyatira for their charity, work, service, faith, patience, and their consideration of the last to be in an order of priority more important than the first. He then airs some of his grievances, namely their tolerance for who he calls or characterizes as that woman Jezebel from the Old Testament stories about the hero Elijah and a prophet to the children of Israel. He says that she has taught and seduced his servants to commit fornication and eat things sacrificed unto idols, a very common problem of civilized humanity, drunkenness and adultery, evil orgies of sexual nature, with varying degrees of subtlety. Sometimes these things can sneak up on you. You don't realize you're committing adultery when you waste time doom scrolling and you get a little lady pop up on your phone in a way that seems to promise you some kind of liaison or connection with her, and you know for a fact that the probability of that being a real signal and message to you from a seriously interested counterparty is essentially zero. There's just no way that's what it is, but it makes you feel that way, and you're happy to be fooled for a few seconds and then continue scrolling to the next false promise and waste hours of your life that way that can turn into days and weeks and amount to wasted years of your life. You can find these sort of advertisements that are lurid in nature, employed by commercial advertisers to entice you to consider going with their brand when shopping for your automobile or any number of products that you may be in the market to buy or that you may not be in the market to buy. If you find that you have an inordinate appetite for spending money on things that you may like, but that you later feel regret, and that this is a habit and a pattern of spending and regret, it may be that you have been hooked by this pernicious form and use of adultery. So it doesn't have to be anything so loud and so obvious as a husband or wife coming home from somewhere and finding their marital partner in the act of cheating on them. to be adultery. But in this case, it is something that has become such a serious problem that the angel feels it would seem they would be remiss not to include a mention of it to the church in Thyatira, along with his praises for their virtues and the good things they have done so far. He says, now reading on from where we left off on the previous video, and I gave her space, the angel says, or the guy in the candlestick, the guy, perhaps some being constituted of light, of some light stuff like photons or electron configurations, some organization of these things, or some organization of these along with the inhabitants of the magnetic fields, and this being made of light proceeding from 7 candlesticks that speaks to John goes on to say for John to write in a message to the angel of the church of Thyatira, behold, I will, goes on to say, and I gave her, referring to Jezebel, to this one who he refers to or characterizes as Jezebel. He says, and I gave her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not. So it's not even as if that she is in some way an innocent victim that was stupidly lured along to engage in this sort of operation and cause such a problem as to bear mentioning, but that she was even in some way given the ways to, by her own means, change course, adjust, focus and aim, and calibrate and change direction, and to aim for a different result. And she did not do so. As a result, this being tells John to say to the angel in the church of Thyatira, behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. So he says she was given a space to repent before. Repent is a Greek word, metania. You might, in the way you use Greek terms in English, feel more comfortable pronouncing it metanoia, although in Greek they would say it metania. Metanoia, meta referring to an overview, a transformative overview, a coordination of the constituent elements of an organization in 3 dimensions across time, along the lines of its local area of the network, in order to produce a desired result. Meta and noia is the Greek word for the mind. So he says that unless she so that's what the word repent is. And she says, so repent means, you could say it in the simplest English, to turn, to change your mind. Would probably be the closest rendering in English of the Greek word used here. Um, the word repent is no longer in common usage, and most listeners or readers will likely fail to correctly import it into their word cloud. So you may say instead, change your mind. He says, unless they change their mind of about what they have done, which can often most directly be accomplished by changing the words that you say about what you are changing your mind about. So now, instead of being given merely the opportunity to change their mind, those who are tangled up in Jezebel's web here, they are now also given an incentive in the form of the threat of a great tribulation. And that it will happen to them in a bed. So this could be that even laying in bed, you are in tribulation, meaning probably some great disease, sickness, physical ailment, or malady that they may suffer. Or a mental one, that even laying in bed, they are troubled by the contradictions in their mode of living and thinking that has become their mode of being, a dysfunctional, disordered, self-defeating, and cancerous mode of being, and that even laying in their beds, they will be so troubled by how wrong they have gone. The being then says to John to tell the angel in the church of Thyatira in this message, and I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts, and I will give unto every one of you according to your works. So not only will she then find herself perhaps physically ill with a terrible sickness or disease, she may also, if she does not change her mind and change her courses, the courses of her daily life, but that she may also find herself troubled in her mind even as she lays down to sleep, even as she wakes from bed, and that furthermore, if she does not change her mind and repent, that her what's next at stake will be the lives of her children. And we see a similar progression in the story of the hardness of heart of the Pharaoh over Egypt toward the most magnificent and marvelous and impossible to ignore message from the God Yahweh or Jehovah, a man of war, a cloud in the air that led Moses and the children of Israel out of captivity in Egypt, who refused, like Jezebel seems to be refusing so far by the time this message is written, to acknowledge the error of his ways and change his mind, and who found in himself, in his people, and in his family, and in the death of his firstborn son, these results promised to the inhabitants of the church of Thyatira here, should they not likewise repent and change their ways? But unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, the angel continues, as many as have not this doctrine, and which have not known the depths of Satan as they speak, I will put upon you none other burden. So he's saying that these consequences promised to Jezebel and her followers will fall upon them, but they will not fall upon those who do not follow Jezebel. And that the extreme, harsh, and cancerous form of sarcasm denoted here as the depths of Satan, that falseness of exaggeration and sarcasm, that when carried out into action and acted out lead to destruction and injustice. But that which ye have already hold fast till I come. So he says, you're safe now, but stay that way. Don't change. You've already heard the warnings given for those who have gotten tangled up in the errors of Jezebel. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. So the kind of power, so he says that instead of the result that Jezebel and her followers will bear, that the result that those who continue in the way that the angel has praised and that exclude from their matter of organization and form of work and life those errors of Jezebel, will be given the kind of power that is used to administrate and govern and safeguard and secure and expand and develop and advance and improve even nations of people, so that great diversity and many good things can all be gathered together and used together by the economy and society of people in a good way that is good for their health and good for their life. And that kind of power will be given to even individuals who keep in the ways prescribed by the angel in the message here. And he shall rule them, the nations, with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. So not only will they be given the power of government or the power of administration or the power of empire, but they will actually be promoted to positions of influence and leadership in their societies, so that they will use that power to help rule the nations, which is to see what is going on, to rule something like you use a ruler to measure it, to see and measure and count all these diverse and several goods of nations, these wealths and treasures of nations, and that they will not only see and measure these wealths of nations, but they will guide these wealth of nations as with a rod, as a shepherd does his sheep with a rod, and that the rod will be made of iron, so that their guidance will be strong, and it will be sure, and it will be uh, pure and cured like iron, like wrought iron, and it will be manufactured and burnished in fire like iron. He said, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers. So a potter creates those vessels like cups and bowls, which people use to dine at the table. And like what is used as a tool for humans to have their meals, the nations will be counted and divided in the finest ways, down to even the very very fine dust-like remains of a crushed clay vessel. So their level of attainment will be very fine. Not only will they be powerful in their form of organization, in their orderliness, in their processor power over nations of people, but they will exercise a mastery over the smallest elements of this substantial world that we inhabit on this planet. So they will become like chemists, and they will understand. They won't become like chemists, they will become chemists, and they will exercise mastery over the very tiny keys that constitute the chemical elements and compounds which make up the many useful substances on planet Earth. So they will be given very great knowledge after they are given this great power, the power of government or administration, with the care and the competence over the life and health and wealth of people. That after they receive these, then they will also be given specified knowledge over chemical science itself, and that they will be able to administer an economy over the many substances modern civilization organizes together into such a great and useful and prosperous economy. He finishes the second chapter saying, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Now remember, earlier in the text so far, this angel has derided the ear and hearing, and has elevated above them as better for your use as the receiver of this message, the use of the eyes and sight. He also emphasizes that he is like a processor, that which is the Alpha and the Omega. He is like a coded key processor, a codex. So even though he may speak to you in images, in that which is wrought in light, in lines, in lines of sight, in depictions of things in lines of sight, that he can use imagery the way the ear uses words and the key code signatures of words in combinations to transmit and receive a message, and that he can do so using light. So it may be that this being is a dream, or that he is speaking through the form of a dream, and perhaps in a literal dream to John as he is sleeping. And it may be suggestive of the commonly reported experience that humans have received messages this way, as of a dream, and that though the dream seems bizarre, strange, confusing, or random, or without meaning to the ears, which are used to using words to transmit intelligence and messages, that in fact, with some effort, perhaps not unlike the cryptographic process described earlier in the text, can transmit messages as you are sleeping and experiencing a dream, and that your own mind and the contents of your own brain may be an active participant with the sender of a message to you as you sleep and dream, in the way that the decoder of a cryptographically secured message may would be an active participant in reading the message. So that's the end of chapter 2. In chapter 3, the angel continues on to the fourth church in this series and says, "And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, These things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead." So he knows what they've done. He knows what people say about them and call them. And he knows that they're alive, but they're also dead, whatever that means. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God. He says then, so to take an overview of yourself to these recipients of this message in Sardis, to take an overview, to step outside yourself and to take inventory of yourself the way you may take inventory of others, to judge yourself, to weigh and measure, and to write about or draw pictures about, or tell jokes about, or play games about the nature of how you operate yourself and engage with your area of the network over time. And he says, as you do that, do it with an eye toward finding those things which are going to die in you, which may it reminds me of something cancerous, and either those things die or they die and the rest of you dies as well, are your two options when you have cancer. And as he says, I have not found thy works perfect before God, would be a good way to describe cancer. For I have not found thy works perfect before God. That is what the cancerous cells of an organ or tissue say to an overactive immune system, sending immune cells that have adapted to attack your body's healthy cells. And that is what those maladaptive immune cells say to those cells, those healthy cells, which they are attacking. It may be tempting to ask the question, so who's right? The angel here seems pretty clearly to be on the side that the attacking cancerous cells, which may be that Jezebel, or like in some ways that Jezebel and her organization and followers described and attributed to the church, the inhabitants of the church at Thyatira. And the angel seems to be decidedly on the side of the ones that can go on living without the ones that are trying to kill them, and the ones that cannot go on living without the ones they are trying to kill. That the first ones are right, that they've found the others' works not to be so perfect, and that the second order of cells in a human body are wrong. He continues, remember therefore how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. So that's in a human mind, that's almost worse than something actually happening to you, and then you know what you can do about it. It's the threat of something happening that could happen to you, and you don't know what it will be, so you don't know how to be prepared for it. And you will live with anxiety and stress, bordering on paranoia or psychosis if it progresses, if you have to live this way, with fear of the unknown and vain search for security against the threats of the unknown. Now, this is a mirror and diabolical, image of the wealth of nations promised in the previous chapter to those who follow in the way of good works, charity and service, love for others, care for the organization, and that avoid these cancerous, maladaptive forms of organizations that arise in very commonly in human civilization. Instead of that great wealth of nations under the management and care of one who is apt, one who is organized in a simple yet powerful way that produces the results that most people desire, that instead we have someone disorganized who has given in to the errors of Jezebel's organization, and who has perhaps even begun to fail at carrying on in good works and service and charity, and thereby instead become envious and just in their minds consider, without actually considering with any scientific specification, any measured observation, those forms of government and administration mentioned just earlier in the text, all the possible threats of such a great wide world with so many inhabitants, and instead they will become weak and vulnerable to these threats, or at least certainly so far in the text it is promised that they will become afraid of all of these with nothing to do about their fear. The angel continues, "Thou hast a few names even in Sardis which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy." So he says that.
I'm so sorry. Is there any way to keep like a little bit quieter?
Sure.
Because we can hear you all the way over there.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So he says that those that have defiled their garments uh, have arisen in Sardis and become um, that they have become uh, so numerous in Sardis that only a few are known not to have defiled their garments. What does this mean? Well, your garments are your clothes. The properties of clothes, they make it easier for human beings to be civilized. They distract us from our reproductive faculty and focus our eyes on each other's eyes. And they focus us on our more intelligent faculty that is more cognizant of space and time and your area of the network. And so clothes elevate us and lift us into our mind, where our eyes and ears and noses, and where our mouth is, which we use to produce speech, to communicate messages to other counterparties in our organization. So one who has defiled their garments may be one who has fallen into the error of Jezebel so far that they could be said to have defiled their garments and made their clothes of no use to them. And the angel says, "And they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy." Now, white is the full bandwidth of the visible spectrum, the rainbow or Roy G. Biv, all the colors that a human eye can see when sent over sent over the air in, or the sent when sent through a conductor for light. They are sent in certain packets where the wavelengths align in a certain way. All 7 of these colors in arraignment together in a certain way produce the perception of white in human eyes. So he says that whoever does not continue in these errors, he says, here's what he says. He says that in Sardis, most, a super majority, um, one may say nearly all. How many inhabitants would you reckon are in Sardis at the time this message is received? He says there are a few names even in Sardis which have not defiled their garments. So it's really bad in Sardis if he says even is. So it's probably not that there's 5 inhabitants of Sardis and all of them don't fall into this category, right? See, in the space here of maybe fewer than 20 words, he's using English words here as mathematical operators that can help you divine a certain proportion or percentage or number. Are there 100 inhabitants of Sardis? Say there were 100, if not 10, and half of them. Certainly, we could say, going by orders of magnitude, one in the decimal system, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, moving the decimal over one place on the integral number line, um, or discrete number line, however you want, whatever language you want to say it in. Um, that it's probably more than 10 people in Sardis, because if he's referring to a few here, that then if there are 10 inhabitants in Sardis, it would be half of them. A few would be half. It could even be more than half, depending on how you think of the word a few. The somewhat vagueness of these terms makes them sometimes even more excellent in their usage for mathematics, in a world of such nuance and fuzzy logics, um, and in such a dynamic and changing world. Um, and in a world where of economy where further specification is unnecessary, so that even here there is an economy of the text, an economy of the usage of words, and that the writer does not go any further to say anything than he must go to say precisely what he must say to form this message that he is sending. So it's probably more than 10, or he would not say even in Sardis. So let's say it's 100. Now, if it's a few names in 100, it's like 95 of the 100 inhabitants about whom the angel is speaking have fallen so far in their error that not only are they subject to these maladies of mind and body, that even laying in bed, they are sick and hurting, but that they may lose the lives of their own children by persisting in these errors, and that it will come on them when they're not expecting it, and they will not be able to tell the future, and they will not be able to move out of the way of what will hit them next if they continue to persist in these kinds of errors. Um, and that 95 at least of 100, to say the least, that we can say from these words written here, are so far gone in the error of their ways, and only 5 uh, have avoided making these errors and have continued in a way that is um, healthy and vital, and deserving of even the responsibilities of the administration of nations of people. Um, and so they are very outnumbered. And it was so also in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Middle East, where Abram and Lot inhabited, in the very first book in this series. And those nations were reportedly destroyed with fire from the sky. So the angel says that these few who remain, commendable by the angel for their virtue and for the absence of their vice, of any vice to control or sway or compromise or corrupt them, that they are very few, and that these few will receive a power like the power to turn all of the seven visible colors of the rainbow into a single white light that contains all of them. And he says, for they are worthy, which is a term sailors would use to describe the ability of a boat to pass over water and to navigate the various hazards of maritime travel without the vessel becoming destroyed or in some way crashing against waves, losing its rigging and breaking apart. Breaking up is hard to do, or by capsizing, overturning, capsizing, and sinking, or by taking on water and sinking. And that these may very precisely describe in a very simply formed word tree or program, plan, design, or report written in English words that, like a doctor could write, how these problems that are taken very seriously in these texts, arrayed, and the fundamental constants and relationships among these problems in terms of their causes and effects. It may that be, I'm saying here that to call a vessel a worthy vessel to travel over water, say, or over light, as the angel says here, in its fundamental programmatic structure, in its design, bears congruities with the design of one who excludes corruption and keeps and maintains and uses virtue, like those in the church, like the angel has implored those in the church in Thyatira to keep. So that a worthy boat, a worthy vessel, in some mathematical way that is so simple a fifth grader could see it, rhymes with a model of healthy and life-giving human virtue. And perhaps even these few in Sardis who comport with this model, who can be observed to be like this model, to be patterned after it, to repeat its patterns in their mode of operation, in their daily life, and in their plan for their lives, their calendar and their day planner for their weeks and months and the years of their life, and the trajectory and span of their life. That these few will also be worthy to attain such a fine power as mastery over light itself. So at the end of chapter 2, they are promised those that avoid those errors described in the church of Pergamos and Thyatira and keep their virtues, that these are connected with mastery over chemicals: hydrogen, helium, oxygen, carbon. But here they are promised, and in connection uh, with the progression of the errors so far as we have determined here, 95% or more of the organization corrupted, that there is still hope for the remaining 5% to reorder the organization itself, take charge by means of these gifts, these tools, these functions, these applications, these program processors that are given from, as we found from the earliest part of the first chapter, according to the messenger here, by Jesus Christ, referencing most likely the monographs of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and of that which is constituted across time, and of that which is constituted in some way similar to the nature of light, which has a very specific nature which can be measured and described mathematically in simple ways that even a fifth grader could understand, and have been done so by many scientists such as J.C. Maxwell, John von Neumann, the Hungarian von Neumann. I think his name is John, Max Planck, and others, and that have been, and this knowledge has been demonstrated to be apt to describe the light phenomena that it purports to by the abundant proliferation of technologies using these observations and mathematical equations to harness light for the uses of human civilization and society, to ostensibly advance and improve the quality and vitality, the strength and endurance, and the beauty of human life. The blessings of our blood sprinkled across this abundant planet can make you feel very small. He that overcometh the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. So So these beings will learn to use light to carry on the faculties of their eyes and ears and noses and mouths and tongues and their brains. And it would seem by now in history, as this dissertation is being recorded, that we on planet Earth, or some very few among us, have found to make it possible for us to use light in this way. And as I was saying, that they have demonstrated the correctness of the science they have applied to produce radio and telegraphic transmissions, lasers, televisions, cellular phones and computers, and that these have been useful in furthering the goals of life. And the angel says that he will confess your name before his Father if you are like these few who understand and rightly order those many who have gone so far off from the requirements of human nature to continue and to live in a good way. And he will confess it before his angels. So I don't know, whatever his Father means. Probably somebody who, like a father, is older than this angel, ostensibly speaking to John to deliver this message, and older and more experienced and knowledgeable and wiser, and that who holds the speaker in some esteem and care as of the care of a father for their son or daughter, and before his angels, which are the emanations of his Father, his Father's concerns, his Father's signals into the world that may be relayed along certain lines by certain ways and means. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. Okay, so this is the message to the angel of the church in Philadelphia. And the angel continues to re-emphasize to John some way that he is holy, which means set apart. So he is from somewhere very far away to be sending this message. He that is true, truth means that which is straight, that which hits its target. Truth is an archery term. It has to do with the trajectory of an arrow, or the aim of the arrow, or the entire form of the archer that produces that result may all be regarded as true if the archer hits his intended target when he intends to fire the arrow, or whatever, shoot the arrow. He that hath the, he, so the angel is saying that he's from far away and that he's talking perhaps to the right people, and that he is sending them a list, a checklist for them that hits all the right targets, and that through them he hits the right targets if they line up with his aim. And he that hath the key of David, so that he is a good reader of the story of David, written in the ancient books of Samuel and Kings and Chronicles, and that so now, for some reason, at this point in the text, perhaps in connection with the Church of Philadelphia and the uh, contents immediately later in the text, or perhaps in some regard to all the entire contents of the text written hitherto, or all the contents of the text from now until the end of the text, or in some way both, dividing both it by some equivalency, that every specification of the text up until this key of David written here, and every specification in the text written after until the end of the text, align in some way congruent to something that may be found in those texts written of David. Which is very persuasive writing, if nothing else, and an effective lure to uh, research and find the texts of David and read what is written in them. He that openeth and no man shutteth. So he says, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, and he that openeth and no man shutteth. So you could say it's like some form of ratchet in nature, in mechanical nature. A ratchet, a Pandora's box. This sounds like Pandora's box. It could be opened but cannot be shut. Um, you let the worms out of the can or whatever, and it's like the past. That which is in the past has been opened and no man can shut it. It is now forever beyond the reach of the inhabitants of the present and future to shut it. But in some ways, it is available to them to shut. You can close out aspects of the past by connecting them to the future through some process of organization, some transformational process of organization, so that the past is not necessarily so full of sunk costs as we may think, and that even losses and injuries that are closed in the past may be opened again by those in the present with a view toward the future, and find in their loss or injury some opportunity, some lead, some idea, some proceed, some yield, some course of action for them to discover and manifest in their possession, to become a new property they attain, a something of equal or greater value than what was lost or damaged. He says, I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Okay, so he sees the angel of the church at Philadelphia. He what he has described thus far, or continues to describe as his message in this text, is like an open door. So it's something that the recipient of the message can pass through. It's passable, and it enters into a different room, a new space, something with something different that they may find there, and that the door cannot be shut. Now, a lot of this does describe, it sounds to me that a light physicist may say this is much like the property of light or photons. Written in a field against other photons. Jesus says in one of the Gospels that where two or three are gathered in my presence, I am there with them, which is a big claim. He would be saying that he is like everything that way, because by means of triangulation, with just three photons, one may triangulate where all the other photons are and be able to, by means of just two dots in space time, two dots coordinated by four columns of coordinates or spaces for coordinates, four um, four letters, four letters or four numbers along four different domains that can be coordinated to find a coincidence at the point described or marked by those four letters in combination using this schema. And it's remarkable that with only two photons, with only three, one can use them as a codex to then produce another set or list of terms to describe all of the same photons in their observable relation to each other, which may be another way of saying to see or seeing, and that it may be possible to do so with just two photons, may be suggestive of the use of time or some kind of folding of the space described as an element in the triangulation to form the new codex, or copy of everything there is using only two or three photons as the coder decoder. Remarkably, we can take these properties and the simulations that they can produce and boil them down to something even finer than light photons, which appear to our vantage as humans on planet Earth as mere dots in space-time, singularities in time and space, at least from our vantage, and there are so many of them as to render the word sublime inadequate to describe their number. We can boil these properties even further down to digital key code signatures like letters and numbers and letters, and mathematical equations. And the functional equation in math performs and can perform the same operations with such a light economy, even lighter than light in some way. The lightest thing there is, code or God, as they say in English, or alphabet, as they say in Hebrew, alphabet, as they say in Greek. We call it God. And it's even lighter than light in some ways. And using the functional equation, we can tune that very simple two particles or one to find variances or track a function of variables along certain coordinates in a field. There's an interesting Franz Kafka story, if I recall the author correctly, about an open door that I will leave for the viewer or listener to maybe remember and find later. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Okay, so he says, look, all of these overwrought exaggerators and um, um, vicious users of cruel sarcasm, who exaggerate and act out sarcasm to the point of self-destruction. Hey, look, humans love exaggeration, sarcasm, and they're useful tools for humans to actually get a better view of what they're trying to see correctly. So it's not saying that sarcasm or exaggeration are wrong. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so popular. People like to use them because they are good for something. A cartoon is just a frolic through exaggeration and sarcasm. All the best cartoons that everyone loves are like that. And some good writing, some good satire is like that as well. But people are acting out. People have been acting out. And it starts with wanting everybody instead of just waiting and praying for God, which means studying and improving yourself along the lines of God and the realities and strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of yourself and your area of the network in such a way that you would become more attractive to the opposite sex, so that you could get a boyfriend or girlfriend that is good for you and that you're good for, and be good enough to be a good friend to them and be able to help them and take care of them and to bring health and strength and gladness to their life, and to continue to do so without failing, and not to bring all of their opposites to their life as well, and to do so for an entire lifetime. that instead of doing that, people have gotten greedy looking around and have been going on a very arduous journey of prolonged people shopping, and it's easier than ever using these phones, and our disorganized leaders in Silicon Valley have not yet caught on to the seriousness of the problem, and their their direct help in making the problem so virulent and giving it so much velocity and force and propagating it so far into the lives of the people that use their smartphones and the internet, and that to the point that these problems have pervaded our lives outside our use of the terminal to the network, to the computer network, and that our societies have been disrupted, and our economies have been disrupted, and our families have been disrupted, and our lives have been disrupted, and we have been caught unawares, like the thief that comes in the night, promised to the church by the angel here, and that it has happened to us in the United States, and that we have found this to be our common and lived experience among the so many millions of us, the inhabitants of this nation, in the past 3 or 4 generations. And that these leaders in Silicon Valley who built the computer network so fast and so finely tooled it are responsible, and that they have earned by the building of these connections and these processes for them so many billions and billions of dollars just to begin with, that will, in their financial gravity, surely draw to themselves many more billions in just the next 5 or 10 years, and trillions upon trillions in the next 2 decades alone. And that they got paid that much money, and that they started this, and that they should not put their hand to the plow and look back, that they should not abandon their works, but that they are responsible, and that they better use the knowledge and the experience they have thus far, and they better acquire more knowledge and fill in the gaps where they're missing, where they didn't study up, where they didn't learn everything there is to learn, not just how to wire up computers, but the entire history of planet Earth, the entire history of this country, everything, economics, psychology, biosciences, the history of Europe, the history of the Afro-Eurasian subcontinent and its crossroads at the Middle East, and to find every record left for us that has been left from a credible authority that bears such pertinence and such urgency as the message written in this book, which I am reading to you in this video series, that they would study all these things, and that they would take up their work again, that they would not sit back and spend their money and just lay asleep and drunk in their giant houses, and just keep buying houses, and just keep trading expensive cars worth more than 10 people's houses, but that they would continue to work because they owe that to us. And they got paid, and they got paid more than anyone's ever been paid. And this work is exciting, and it's interesting, and it's fun. And that's why they started it in the first place and took it so far. They made that much money, and they better not abandon us now. They better not just sit here and watch us scream at each other over our phones to overthrow the government and start all the old stupid fights back up again, and exhibit all our worst misbehavior like a bunch of young, juvenile drunkards on a reality television show from the late 90s and early 2000s, writ large across our population. You are responsible. You are being investigated. The FBI and DOJ are watching you. The Federal Trade Commission is watching you, and you had better be responsible for what you've done and help take care of our people now that you have abrogated yourself above these authorities as the new government, after they have finally, after hundreds of years, demonstrated themselves so apt to govern such a society and economy over so many people by the 1980s and 90s, when you started rigging this thing up out of Southern California. So you better be getting back to work. You better study up, and you better keep your head screwed on straight, because God is real. The word is real. And he says, so what he's saying to the church in Philadelphia is, okay, so exaggeration and sarcasm has got to the point that people are acting out, and it's causing an enormous amount of loss and injury and destruction and death and sickness and regret, and people missing out on their destiny, people missing what was theirs, what was laid out for them to get, that should have been theirs, that they would want most out of anything they could have in this life, because of this problem of so much looking around in the grocery store to people shop, using the phones to people shop, and this prolonged this prolonged exercise in people shopping without people being serious, this evil orgy of adultery that teenagers and youth have now been swept up in the tsunami wave of. The synagogue of that, whoever the teachers are, the school that was responsible for that, they say they're Jews. They say they read the Old Testament. They say they read the old books, the messages from really long ago, just to get, get all the help you can, right? That they have not done it. They just act like they did their reading. These guys pretend, and not just, and he says the Jews here, but I add to it the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, the French, the Germans, the English, the Gales, the Irish, the Dutch, the Swiss. There's an awful lot of reading. A lot of these guys just hear what the guys who did study and did do really did the work and read up and did their reading and know what they're talking about. And they all make jokes to each other. A few of them make jokes to each other, and they show the power that they demonstrate, undoubtedly, the power that they've received from their scholarship. And someone hears some of the most popular jokes they say to each other and just parrots those jokes to others to pose and pass off that they're one of those guys that did the reading, but they didn't do the reading. And they don't have the power you can get from doing the reading. And that's where the fraud comes in, which is a form of theft, is they want you to think, some of these guys want you to think they have the power that those guys got from doing the reading as well. And they don't have that power, and they didn't even do the reading. They just say that they repeat the same jokes they heard that those guys tell. They're headline readers. They don't even read the newspaper. They just read the headlines, and they try to catch everything they possibly can to sound like a know-it-all, to sound like a worldly, experienced, knowledgeable master of the planet, the president of the United States, the secretary of state, and make you feel like they're like that by saying a headline, and you're doing the same thing. They do it to each other, so they have to know the other guy's doing it too, because that's what they're doing, and they don't care. They all get in on this. Hey, they're lying to themselves. Why not all of us get together and y'all can help me lie to me too? I'm already lying to myself, and we can all help each other do that. Being a bunch of headline readers and keyword stuffers with no analysis that just says a hot buzzword to set you going and sound like we are current and knowledgeable, and we're so scientific, and we know what's going on, and we have power, we are leaders, we are the government, is how these guys try to act while saying they hate the government, bad mouthing the government, saying giving giving the government no quarter, not even seriously addressing the government, just keyword stuffing the government's name, and then saying, just every most negative thing they can think of to say about the government that's probably true about the one saying it. So that's the synagogue of Satan. Let's say that's the synagogue of Satan. So the angel talking to Philadelphia says that he'll make that if they follow the rules of this game, that they like the church at Thyatira, work, service, love, care, patience, using your time wisely, being a good person, and then not just like creeping on everybody that you're interested in and people shopping all day, but just trying to treat people like family, and at least like neighbors that you respect and are friends with, and be kind of professional and cool, and just wait for it to happen to that you get a boyfriend or girlfriend, and maybe figure out how people are getting boyfriends and girlfriends if you're having trouble finding one. There used to be like dance halls and stuff. People used to go dance like salsa and bachata and stuff, and then you meet a girl, or honky tonks, and you meet a girl, you would meet, or a boy, and you would, and it was a lot of fun. Everybody would be there, like junior high schoolers be there, grandmas would be there, everyone go out and dance, or just a dance for just the singles, a college crowd or whatever, aged people, 20 somethings that are right in that age where they're kind of wanting to, finish playing the game of musical chairs and find somewhere to sit. I will make them to come and worship before thy feet. So so this angel says, if you stay good, if you don't become compromised by the evil Jezebel orgy, then actually, even though you're outnumbered by the synagogue of Satan guys, and you feel like like they're winning and that you're in danger from them, and that you could end up in jail or prison for being a good person, that your society has become that corrupt, that evil and sarcastic, and that careless about what really matters to everyone. That even in that situation, even if you are living in the most corrupt, it's starting to approach something kind of sounding like a corrupt police state like in over Russia, it's starting in the 1910s, or Germany in the 1930s, or China in the 1950s. That China and Germany have seemed to have absorbed a lot of that, and are doing okay, but they're probably still hurting from it and weakened by it in who knows how many ways. And that even in maybe even in such a bleak situation as that, it doesn't sound quite that bad yet. Even to these 7 churches in Asia and the cities surrounding them. But they did arrest one guy. They did kill one guy. They arrested people who are about to arrest people who for being good, and they know they're good, and they're the kind of people you would want to have free and helping the city. And instead, they're so corrupt they arrest them. Um, and and then in another city, Pergamos, they actually kill a good guy, a member of one of these churches, an innocent person and a virtuous person, a good friend and a good neighbor and a good citizen, and the government murders him for being that. So it's not everybody yet, but it's, they aren't just doing half of themselves that way like they did in Russia yet, but that's the way these lines tend to progress, I would say. Because there's some motive power pushing the participants forward through such a rigid form of disorganization that is inimical to our requirements and values as living human generations. Because thou hast, let's see, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet. So he says, so while it may be pretty bleak, actually you are more powerful than these guys. They need your virtue. You do not need their corruption. And uh, and in time, if you continue, if you don't give in, if you don't try to just join them and decide that maybe they're right, if all of them are that way, or even if they're not right, maybe you're better off doing it their way and just going along with them. If you can't beat them, join them. That he says, if instead you do even better than you've been doing, you take even more care not to make the mistakes that you haven't been making or that you've started to make, and you do continue to consistently behave and think in the ways that have profited you so far by the nature of your virtue and its importance in your world, in your neighborhood, that that in fact, not only will you not lose these guys, you'll become their leaders, and you will not only become their leaders, you'll become like their gods. You'll become like guys that landed in a spaceship from another planet, a silver flying saucer with lasers and stuff, and walk down a ramp with the dry ice steam rising around you to some cool soundtrack, while these guys have no idea what to do to even not lose the lives of their own children to accidents and disease. Which you don't have to be much of a scholar to take care of your baby. It is the most natural thing in the world if you are not so viciously corrupted by these elements of the synagogue of Satan, as they call it here. Um, Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation. So then he says, not only that, but that you will receive a new grace and that you will get good luck. That not only will you now be so well organized that it's not like that all of the other corrupt ones will not only regard you as their government and acknowledge you're their government and 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 beg you to give them your help and be their leader, but that and it's if you have to be patient and do all the things he says and not do all the things he says not to do is what he's promising. These will be the results if you try out this game or experiment in your laboratory, that they will regard you as government and beg you to be their leader and regard you as more than government, like super advanced extraterrestrials or like God, or like maybe the way you may imagine John would regard the bringer of this message to him that he wrote as this book. And that not only that, but that they will know that the sender of this message has loved the recipient of this message, or in terms of chapter 13 of Corinthians, that he has been patient and kind to the recipients of this message, and that he has not bragged or boasted about them, perhaps say as in a way that got Job into trouble with Satan in the book of Job, and that they will be given, and that also that the world, they will find the world around them operates differently, almost you could say magically, or you could say that they will begin to find that they have an increasing amount of good luck along their way, or travel mercies, as I have heard some Christians say in prayer circles. Um, and that it will be the work of the one made of light, and that who operates by the ways and means described as of Jesus Christ, and of beings constituted in a timely way over time, and of light. And he says, and he adds, behold, I come quickly. So that perhaps the receiver should not think that they will have to wait very long, or let themselves feel as if they will have to wait very long for the speaker to come. And I think it may have something to do with him being constituted of light, which moves very fast. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. So again, he says, it is where the light is received and precedes the head or the crown, the eyes and ears and nose, the human mind and its universal capability. It's kind of like I was saying earlier to the people in Southern California to keep your head screwed on straight. Okay, well, we're maybe a little over halfway through chapter 3. We may have to continue again and record my annotations on this book of Revelation in 2 parts for chapter 3. Thanks for listening.